This week on Africa Update, United States announces $4 million grants to fight child labor in Nigeria's agricultural sector and communities. Amid food shortages and the rise in poverty levels, how far can this go in curbing child labor? Also on the program, we meet Alexander Boyce, an artist who finds healing in art. This is Africa Updates on Trust TV, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for joining. The U.S. Department of Labor announced a $4 million grant to support international labor organizations in implementing a technical assistance project in West Africa. In a statement, it said the ILO will work with the government of Nigeria and the Economic Community of West African States to initiate a regional, national, and local action to address child labor in the agriculture sector and communities. The ILO and UNICEF currently estimate that more children are working in child labor in Africa than in the rest of the world. In the West Africa region covered by ECOWAS, at least 23% of all children are estimated to be used as child labor. According to the UN, about 152 million children between 5 and 17 years old are engaged in child labor. 73 million of them are in Africa. The UN has called for an end to child labor worldwide by 2025. Its ambitious goal for the continent with the highest rate of child labor in the world. VOA's Jesusemen Oni takes a deeper look at the issue and the fight to restore the childhoods of millions across Africa.
Grueling work for little pay. That's the daily reality for millions of children across Africa. The International Labour Organization estimates about 73 million children in Africa are sent out to work because of widespread poverty, insufficient access to education, and conflict, some as young as 5 years old.
What we're talking about is work that puts their future in jeopardy, whether because their health is on the line, they're working in mines, for example, where the imminent danger of a mine collapse or death.
Mutalda Haig left school in Sudan when he was 12. For him, it was a choice between studying or feeding his family.
My mother kept telling me in the future, and when our life gets better and not get worse, I'll study and become a doctor. But all of a sudden, the whole situation occurred in Sudan.
According to the ILO, 85% of Africa's child laborers work in agriculture. Across all sectors, many are subject to backbreaking labor, long hours, and exposure to dangerous environments. Rights advocates say injuries are not the only problem.
There are other negative aspects because the children's self-esteem is low, because all the time he faces insults or has a low self-esteem, because all the time the factory's owner insults him, makes him feel that he is less than anyone. So you are already bringing up a generation that has no self-confidence.
Experts say putting kids to work is no solution to extreme poverty.
They don't have the opportunity to get an education and learn those skills that would enable them to get a decent job and become productive workers when they're older.
Several African governments, including Ivory Coast, Mali, Rwanda, and Nigeria, have taken steps to address the worst form of child labor, but it's not enough.
Poverty and illiteracy and cultural belief, religious prejudices, these are some of the reasons that has actually affected, the efficacy.
Major U.S. companies, including Apple, Google, Hershey's, and Nestle USA, have come under fire for allegedly failing to combat child labor in their supply chains. The companies say they're committed to responsible sourcing that prohibits the use of child labor. The UN's goal is to end child labor by 2025, an ambitious goal for a continent with the highest rates of child labor in the world.
Now, joining us for more on this, we have the U.S. Labor Undersecretary, Thea Lee, who will give us perspectives on these issues. Hello, Thea.
Happy to be here with you.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, what more do we need to know about this $4 million grant for child labor?
we are very pleased to partner with the Nigerian government and with ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. This, we hope, will reinforce the commitment that the government of Nigeria has made to eradicating child labor. Nigeria became a pathfinder country a little while ago with the United Nations Alliance 8.7. This is a commitment to take many concrete steps. We'll be working in Ondo State for the most part. The International Labor Organization will be working there and looking at particularly at the cocoa growing areas. And we're going to be partnering with some non-governmental organizations on the ground to make sure that we are really rooted in some of the community work that is already going on. We hope to build the capacity of labor inspectors and agricultural extension inspectors so that they can do a better job. We hope to work with the government of Nigeria to make sure that all the laws are fully in compliance and are implemented and enforced.
All right, now what's the strategy that we're looking at here in working with the Nigerian government to distribute this $4 million?
Well, so the International Labor Organization, which is of course a United Nations tripartite organization that has workers, business, and governments as part of the partners of the organization, will be on the ground implementing this project. The idea is we will help promote the enactment of the revised labor standards bill, which is in front of the national work to strengthen Nigeria's hazardous work list. This is a list of jobs that are too dangerous. It fully reflects all of the hazards that we're aware of. We will be supporting the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment in building the capacity of the labor inspectors and agriculture extension officers. And one of the child labor will be safety and health in this sector. And we want national development to make sure that child labor is front and center as Nigeria does the broader work of developing its national development plan.
You know, there's a rising food scarcity here, and more children are likely to be used now in the agricultural sector, looking at the needs to drive, production and the rest of them. How will this grant be of help here?
Yes, and there are a lot of challenges for sure, and we see that all over the world. The pandemic, I think, made the challenges of child labor much worse because children were not in school, because poverty, because of job loss, because of illness of family members. So there are clearly a lot of challenges. We don't believe that this $4 million grant will solve all the problems, but we do hope that what we can do is partner with the government of Nigeria, with ECOWAS, with the non-governmental organizations to strengthen their capacity, to strengthen their ability to do the work that they are committed to doing. So this will give some concrete help, we hope. Some of the NGOs that we're working with in Ondo State are the Restoration of the Dignity of Womanhood, RDOW, and the Kids and Teens Resource Center. So these are organizations that I think need more resources to do the job that they are committed to, and we hope this project will support them in doing that work.
There's a correlation here between the current insecurity that we have in Nigeria, the number of out-of-school children, and of course the issue of child labor. How do you imagine that these funds will go? How far do you see this going, really?
Well, that's a good question, and this is something we do see all over the world, is that poverty and insecurity and good jobs are connected to child labor. And then that's one of the reasons I think that it's important. I think the last piece that I said of mainstreaming child labor into Nigeria's national development plan, this has to be something that is part of how Nigeria is looking at job creation and economic growth. It has to be part of a bigger picture, part of social protection and education to make sure that children have access to good schools. So this project is one small part of a bigger endeavor, and that is one where the Nigerian government and the government of Ondo State are essential players.
All right, so I'll digress just a little bit. We just had the US-Africa summit, and a lot of issues were discussed there and how to smoothing and strengthening the relationship between the United States and Africa. When it comes to Nigeria, what specific issues or how do you intend to move forward with the relationship with Nigeria?
Thank you for that question. And we are really excited about the the Africa World Leaders Summit that happened and the commitment that President some of the issues that we want to work on in all of Africa, but especially in Nigeria, are just transition as we all move towards more environmentally renewable resources and energy and so on. We want to make sure that good jobs and labor rights are built into that work at every step of the way. We're working to promote democracy, and we are working to address some of the challenges around informality, which we know is a big issue in Nigeria, that helping governments transition towards more formal work, towards protecting workers' rights and worker protections in more sectors, especially agriculture. And that's one of the reasons why we are focused on agriculture and child labor for this particular project.
Mm. Are there other areas of collaboration that you are looking at as a follow-up to this $4 million grant moving forward as far as child labor is concerned?
Well, we're doing a lot of work in child labor in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana with respect to cocoa. So we hope to connect and make sure that we are incorporating the learning that we're doing in some of these projects to the others, because as we've said, I think we agree that this is a very challenging area. We're also working on women's economic empowerment in Nigeria and Liberia. So these are other issues. We know that when women have access to better jobs and they're safer on the job, free from discrimination or harassment or gender-based violence, that they can do a better job. One of the key takeaways for us is that we need a holistic approach to child labor. We can't just pluck children out of the workplace. We need to make sure that their families have the supports and the good jobs that they need. And those kinds of measures taken together, I think, are more likely to be effective.
All right. So what other results have been realized from previous engagements as far as child labor is concerned between the United States and Nigeria, if you may?
A good question. Since the Harkin-Engel Protocol on cocoa and child labor, which was from 2001, there has been a lot of work done, a lot of commitments from companies and so on. One of the key things that I think, and this is not just in Nigeria, but more broadly in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, because that's where we did a lot of the work, that the percent of children attending school in cocoa growing area increased in the last 20 years or so from 58% to 80% in Côte d'Ivoire and from 89% to 96% in Ghana. That's from 2009 to 2019. So that is one of the key indicators that we're looking at, is the percent of children who are in school. Part of, I think, what we are doing right now, too, in the Biden-Harris administration is also looking to the broader labor rights, especially freedom of association, the right to bargain collectively. We want to make sure that workers have access to join a union if they want to do so, and that those unions can function as independent and democratic organizations representing workers' rights. We think this is an essential part of democracy, and it is also essential to addressing some of these challenges around child labor, forced labor, human trafficking, and poverty, because unions can provide both a voice at the workplace, but also a voice for workers in the political system. So that's another one of the challenges that we face in Nigeria, but all around.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update and sharing with us more about this $4 million grant as far as the issue of child labor is concerned. Thea Lee, the U.S. Labor Undersecretary, who is giving us this perspective. Thank you a lot. You're watching Africa Update on Trust TV. Coming up, we meet Alexander Boyce, who finds healing in art. Join us again. Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secured are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Really, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
That's great.
Welcome back from that break. A professor of law and activist, Patrick Lumumba, has berated what he considers the humiliating relationship between African leaders and other civilizations. Lumumba, who spoke recently in Nigeria, lamented the lack of leadership and quality representation on the African continent. He believes African leaders must trace their steps back to regain their respect from the international community.
Why is it that the mother continent is ever so negatively attractive to other civilizations? You know, as I talk about leadership, and as I think about leadership, and I think about what leaders are enjoined to do, I think about this mother continent. And many times, I see how our men and women in positions of leadership are being treated by other civilizations. And I said, oh God, where are our leaders? When the world congregates under the G7, there are no African leaders there. The best they can do is to invite one or two. And beyond the photo opportunity, they are told to go away, and go away they do. When there is a meeting of the G20, it is the same thing. There is no African leader there. And when at the United Nations they have voted all our countries, France, the United States, China, Russia, can come and neutralize all our votes. And I say, where are the leaders in Africa? And as you observe African leadership today, they are summoned by different leaders in the world. If the Japanese do not summon them to Tokyo under UNCTAD, the Indians are summoning them to New Delhi. And if the Indians are not summoning them, the Turks are summoning them. And if the Turks are not summoning them, the Chinese are summoning them.
Now, art is unquestionably one of the purest and highest elements in human happiness. It trains the mind through the eye, and the eye through the mind. As the sun colors flowers, so does art color life. Those are the words of John Lubbock. In this report, we meet Alexander Boyce, who finds healing in arts and has since continued to heal others from the pains that life throws up through the paintings he does. VOA's Greenie Niwa tells us more.
Too dark to be beautiful, too dark to be talented, too dark to be heard. These were the words Alexander Boyce says he heard from his family as a child. His time in Dominica made an indelible mark on the young man, even after he moved to New York City.
I guess nowadays you could call it abuse, but I got a lot of really good beatings as a child. And more than just beatings, like the verbal stuff, it kind of made you not feel good about yourself in any way.
Trying to heal, he started painting one day without any training, and the people who saw his work started demanding more.
I had some kind of talent for it.
Along the way, he realized the celebrities he was painting and admiring so much had the same features and complexion he had. And he realized why he was painting.
Spread the message of Black people for us to love ourselves and to celebrate our beauty as much as possible and to just put it everywhere on everything we can find.
The career change Boyce made in his 40s has paid off. Business is thriving. And he says clients tells him his art helps heal their soul too. Jeannie Niwa for VOA News, New York City.
Quite an interesting story there. Now, moving on, let's take a look at Roundup Africa, a highlight of some of the major stories on the continent. Britain's plan to send migrants to Rwanda is lawful, London's High Court ruled on Monday, in a victory for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who has made a high-stakes political promise to tackle the record number of migrants arriving in small boats. The policy, which was denounced by rights groups and even King Charles after it was announced in April, will involve Britain sending tens of thousands of migrants who arrive on its shores more than 4,000 miles away to Rwanda. Announcing the court's decision, Judges Clive Lewis and Jonathan Swift said that it was lawful for Britain to make arrangements with the Rwandan government to send asylum seekers to the country for their asylum claims to be determined there. The ruling is a relief for Sunak, who is fighting growing industrial action, high levels of inflation, and is under increasing pressure from his own members of parliament and the public to deal with the small boats.
They're scared. Everybody in this country should be afraid, because that is the kind of race.
So we're very disappointed by the outcome today. Obviously, we now need to regroup and consider our next steps. It's a huge relief that 8 individual clients who had removal directions to Rwanda have had those decisions squashed, and those will be returned for the Home Office to reconsider. But obviously our concern is with all the hundreds and indeed thousands of people threatened with removal to Rwanda at this point. But I'd add that we have also a concern about access to justice and availability of lawyers, and indeed clients getting notices of intent to remove to Rwanda now and not knowing where to start in terms of finding legal representation and being able to access property representation. So that's a further concern. And all the time that we talk about this, we have people receiving notices, as Claire says, absolutely distraught, devastated by this hovering threat. And beyond that, a wider community of tens of thousands of people beyond that in the asylum system, fearing that they could be exposed to this policy.
National Executive Council, one of the London regional...
Asylum seekers have a right to claim asylum in Britain, and that right...
A 2-year-old boy mysteriously survived a hippopotamus attack in Uganda after the animal swallowed half his body. The minor, identified as Iga Paul, had been playing at his home in Rwenjubu Cell near Lake Edward on December 4th when the hippo grabbed him, and the Uganda police force said. It took the bravery of a good Samaritan, identified as Crispus Bagonza, to save the victim by stoning the hippo and scaring it. By then, the hippo had already swallowed half of the victim's body but spat him out, according to the Ugandan police. The police said this is the first time a hippo has strayed from the lake to attack a young child. After the incident, the child was treated at a hospital for injuries to his hand and given a rabies shot. He has since made a full recovery. The UN Security Council adopted a resolution Tuesday relaxing the embargo on arms exports to Democratic Republic of Congo, a decision hailed by Kinshasa as an injustice repaired. The resolution removes language that previously required countries to inform the Security Council and its 15 members of any sale of arms or military assistance to the DRC. Kinshasa has long deplored this requirement, saying it created an unnecessary bureaucratic obstacle in its fight against armed groups. Well, that's all for now on Africa Update. You can watch more via all our social media platforms and also watch us live on YouTube. I am Ayuba Ila. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.